Well, joining me now to discuss this is border security expert Henry Bolton. Henry, Suella said she would speak out. By Jove, she's roared.
God, roared? She's thrown a hand grenade into the middle of the cabinet office. Wow. I couldn't quite believe what I was reading when I read her letter about 10, 15 minutes ago. And Chris has summed it up nicely, but if I may, just add a couple of other things. You have manifestly and repeatedly failed to deliver on every single one of these key policies. Either your distinctive style of government means you are incapable of doing so, or as I must surely conclude now, you never had any intention of keeping your promises. I mean, this is incredibly damning stuff. And, you know, the Rwanda thing, she's talking about as well. She's made, there's a lot in this letter about how she has advised the Prime Minister and his team not to just assume that this is going to be a walk through the court and they're going to get cleared by the Supreme Court tomorrow, but to plan for the eventuality that that might not happen. And she's saying that she's got absolutely no response to that. It is damning stuff. The reality is that, of course, she's right. Of course, that's what government should be doing. And what this tells me, Martin, I mean, stepping outside borders really a bit, but what this tells me is that Rishi Sunak, despite anything that Suella Braverman has been saying in the media or elsewhere about homeless or about policing, the fact is that Rishi Sunak, some time ago, clearly made a strategic decision to position the Conservative Party at the centre of politics rather than the centre-right. And that's what he's now enacted with this cabinet reshuffle. I don't see this leading anywhere whatsoever in terms of immigration, borders, policing, Palestinian protests, or anything of the like. Martin, this is explosive stuff. And if this doesn't lead to a civil war and change in the Conservative Party, nothing will.
And Henry, the more you look, the worse it gets for Rishi. The detail is incredible. One of the key points here was about British law having supremacy over the ECHR, and a detail on the second page, the final paragraph here, Henry. Suella is intimating that this could well leave us vulnerable to being thwarted yet again by the Strasbourg court. So she's clearly stating here, even if we overcome the Supreme Court hurdle, it will be challenged again in Strasbourg, and Rishi isn't prepared for that. And once again, people will ask the huge question, who's in control, Brussels or the UK?
Well, Martin, you're absolutely right with what you say. And she also goes into some detail about the advice that she's provided Downing Street with that's been ignored in order to prepare for that eventuality. The reality is that the appointment of David Cameron, arch Remainer, the man who led the campaign to stay within the European Union, is now the Foreign Secretary. Now, it defies any sort of credible argument whatsoever that this man has been appointed in order to appease Brussels. This now is a government that has no intention of taking on Brussels on the hard issues. It is a government that wants to sort of bend with the Brussels wind, so to speak. That means deferring to it. And that doesn't bode well for Britain going forward, as far as I'm concerned. We've got to be a confident, optimistic, prosperous and secure independent nation going forward. That's what the referendum demanded. And now some people are saying this is taking us back to 13 years ago. Well, it's certainly taking us back almost to 2016 prior to the referendum. We've got a Remainer government.
Henry, in terms of the political fallout of this, apart from the immediate shockwaves that Rishi will be feeling, and there's been a lot of talk, of course, about Suella Braverman repositioning herself as a new darling, potential future leader of a right wing of the Conservative Party. And the final line, Henry, in this letter is very indicative of her next move, perhaps. She says this: I will, of course, continue to support the government in pursuit of policies which align with an authentic Conservative agenda. Now, that couldn't be clearer to me. I wonder what your take is. She's basically saying that Rishi's government isn't Conservative and isn't authentic.
Martin, I've been tweeting, and I've almost said just now that This is Rishi Sunak having made a strategic decision to go for the centre ground and turn his back on centre-right, patriotic, pro-British conservatism. And, you know, that worries me significantly. And Suella Braverman's obviously of that mind as well. And she's far more informed than me on this. And I know there are big ructions now within the Conservative Party. I think there will be a lot of head scratching right on the centre right, on the conservative, in the conservative wing of the Conservative Party. What do we do now? Do we, as we might have been prepared to do, continue to support Rishi Sunak because he's the leader going into the next general election, because it's too late to change horses now? Or is this so bad now that the Conservative Party decides to try and trigger yet another leadership contest going into that election in the hope that they might get something better? My concern about that, Martin, is twofold. One, I've been there, and a party that keeps changing leader is not going to be particularly successful if it does it too often. But the second thing is that I don't really see the leadership being in place to put in place a team, if Sunak were to go, ready to fight, to enter that campaign. So the Conservative Party is at a crossroads. Which way is it going to turn?